Within a sealed session at NATO headquarters in Brussels, an event unfolded that has no precedent in the 76-year lifespan of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the gravest split in transatlantic ties since the Marshall Plan was unveiled in 1947. I want you to grasp the significance of what I'm about to share because the developments in that room during the last 4 hours aren't merely a foreign policy tale. This is a trial of endurance for the Western coalition that has maintained stability in Europe for 3/4 of a century, testing if it can endure when one individual declares the principles of shared defense no longer bind him. If you're concerned about the future of U.S. safety and worldwide order in the coming 96 hours, you should join this channel immediately and enable alerts because Donald Trump's actions in Brussels today will decide if NATO lasts beyond February with disastrous effects on American influence. Here's the information we have. 3 separate informants, 2 from the American team at NATO headquarters and 1 from a high-ranking figure in the German Defense Ministry, have verified to us the events of that urgent gathering. Per these informants, Trump delivered a demand to German Chancellor Friedrich Mertz that was so novel, so confrontational, that it has sparked what envoys are terming the gravest partnership emergency since the Suez Affair of 1956. The confidential records of that discussion were sent to the White House Situation Room at 10:14 a.m. Brussels time. Those records, as per someone informed about their details in the last 3 hours, include phrasing that one NATO figure labeled as the foreign policy version of a war proclamation against America's key European partner. Several informants, and I mean individuals who have devoted their whole professions to overseeing ties across the Atlantic, are informing me that Trump's words in that space violated every boundary that has regulated NATO interactions for 76 years. Ex-ambassador to NATO Douglas Lute, who worked under both George W. Bush and Barack Obama, informed CNN only 90 minutes ago that if the accounts are correct, this constitutes the most disruptive step any U.S. leader has ever made regarding the coalition. Professor Sarah Chen, who instructs on European defense strategy at Georgetown's School of Foreign Service, informed journalists that the historic analogy isn't a policy dispute, but the sort of demand that comes before partnership breakdown. Based on flight monitoring info from Flight Radar 24, a U.S. Air Force C-32 plane, which usually transports top cabinet members, left Brussels at 11:43 a.m. local time and is presently heading to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. That travel route indicates urgent discussions are occurring at this moment at the top tiers of the U.S. Armed Forces Command in Europe. Now, allow me to illustrate precisely what transpired and why this is the instant that might terminate the Western coalition as we've recognized it for 3 generations. Here's what the chronology discloses about the path to this unmatched division. To comprehend the occurrences in that Brussels room this morning, you must grasp the method Donald Trump has employed to obtain yields from European partners since resuming the presidency 5 weeks ago. This didn't emerge suddenly. It was a series of warnings, demands, and tactical errors, and each phase was recorded. Let me guide you through precisely how this developed, because the order is crucial. Tuesday, February 18th, 8 days prior, Trump shares on Truth Social at 6:14 a.m. that NATO participants are moochers and that the U.S. is being exploited by nations unwilling to invest properly in their own protection. The message explicitly identifies Germany, labeling it the primary violator in the group. That message wasn't a spontaneous early outburst. Per 2 individuals aware of White House strategy then, that Truth Social entry was the initial step in an organized push that had been brewing since the swearing in. Wednesday, February 19th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio reaches Brussels for what was portrayed as standard talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. But here's what few are aware of. Per someone who joined the setup sessions, Rubio brought a paper that White House personnel internally dubbed the graduation scheme. That paper, which remains undisclosed and which European authorities declined to address publicly, outlined a system where some NATO participants would shift from complete coalition status to affiliate associates if they didn't achieve certain defense investment goals by March 1st. The paper allegedly named Germany, Spain, Belgium, and Luxembourg as nations at risk of such shift. The benchmark was portrayed as inflexible. 2.5% of GDP for defense or encounter prompt repercussions. Thursday, February 20th, German Chancellor Friedrich Mertz, in power just since December, replies openly but carefully. Mertz informs journalists in Berlin that Germany is dedicated to hitting the 2.5% goal, but the schedule must be practical considering fiscal limits and the setup of the German federal framework. Mertz's manner was restrained, tactful, aimed at easing strain. But here's where it turns risky. Per a source within the German Chancellery, Mertz's group thought they faced typical Trump rhetoric, the type of overt push that could be handled via confidential guarantees and gradual yields. They basically misunderstood the impending developments. Friday, February 21st, Trump phones Mertz directly. The discussion, planned for 20 minutes, concluded after 7 minutes. Per someone updated on the German perspective of that exchange, Trump informed Mertz that Germany had 72 hours to reveal a specific strategy to attain 2.5% defense investment by the close of 2025, or confront what Trump termed harsh outcomes for the two-way bond. Mertz supposedly inquired about the nature of those outcomes. Trump, per this source, indicated the U.S. would start handling Germany like non-partner countries in commerce talks, safety collaboration, and data exchange. The discussion closed suddenly when Mertz attempted to clarify the restrictions of alliance governance and legal budget procedures. Trump, per this narrative, said he wasn't concerned with justifications and disconnected. Now here's where the narrative shifts unexpectedly. No one anticipated it. Saturday, February 22nd, Mertz assembles an urgent session of his alliance cabinet. The session lasts 6 hours. Per disclosed reports that surfaced in Der Spiegel and Süddeutsche Zeitung over the weekend, the session exposed profound splits inside the German administration on responding to Trump's demand. The Free Democrats, the lesser alliance associate emphasizing financial restraint, contended that Germany couldn't and shouldn't yield to demands that breached German legal mandates for fiscal organization. The Christian Democrats, Mertz's own faction, were divided between those seeking a middle ground and those convinced any yield would encourage more requests. The Social Democrats, who hold sway despite lacking control, contended openly that Germany shouldn't forfeit its independence to placate a U.S. leader whose dedication to NATO was inherently untrustworthy. Sunday, February 23rd, Mertz appears on German state TV. In a precisely phrased declaration, Mertz declares that Germany will speed up its defense investment hikes and plans to hit 2.5% by 2027, 2 years before the prior objective. But Mertz also utters something that would turn out disastrous soon after. He states that Germany's dedication to NATO is absolute, but that NATO is a partnership of peers, not a safeguard scheme where one participant imposes conditions on everyone else. That term, protection racket, was quickly latched onto by Trump supporters as proof that Germany wasn't committed to load distribution and that Mertz was offending American contributions to European safety. Monday, February 24th, 48 hours earlier. The circumstances intensify sharply. At 4:47 a.m. Eastern Time, Trump shares on Truth Social that Friedrich Mertz is a feeble commander who fails to realize that Americans are weary of funding German safety while Germany sponges and preaches to the U.S. about freedom. The message concludes with a caution. The complementary journey ends. Germany will contribute its due portion, or Germany will discover existence without U.S. safeguarding. That message wasn't mere talk. Per sources within the Pentagon who communicated with Politico and the New York Times in the last 24 hours, Trump had already directed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to ready choices for a major reduction of U.S. troops based in Germany. Those troops presently total about 35,000 active personnel distributed over various sites, including Ramstein Air Base, which functions as the supply center for all U.S. armed activities in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Before I reveal the subsequent events, you must grasp one additional background element that alters all of it. Let me explain the individual central to this emergency. Because Friedrich Mertz isn't some arbitrary European administrator attempting to handle Trump's disorder. Mertz is 69 years old. He devoted a decade as a European Parliament member. He acted as the head of the Christian Democratic Union group in the Bundestag. He was the designated successor to Angela Merkel before being outplayed in party internal affairs. Mertz exited politics in 2009 and passed the following decade in business, ultimately serving as chair of the oversight board for BlackRock Germany. He re-entered politics in 2018 and invested years establishing himself as the figure who could revive the CDU post-Merkel period. Here's what you need to comprehend about Mertz's mindset. This is a person who has built his entire profession showing skill, authority, and command of intricate policy elements. He is profoundly dedicated to the transatlantic partnership and to Germany's position as a dependable associate in European defense. But Mertz is also a person with considerable self-respect and a conviction that Germany shouldn't be regarded as a lesser entity. Per people who know him intimately, Mertz sees Trump's method toward Germany as essentially insulting, not only to him individually, but to German autonomy and honor. Several German authorities have informed journalists in the past week that Mertz approached this emergency thinking he could control Trump via a mix of resolve and courtesy. What Mertz didn't foresee was that Trump had zero desire to control the bond whatsoever. Trump sought submission or division, and he was completely ready for division. Tuesday, February 25th, yesterday morning, the German administration issues a comprehensive fiscal outline detailing how Germany will achieve 2.5% defense investment by the end of 2026, 1 year sooner than Mertz's TV declaration. The outline features particular budget entries, acquisition strategies, and a schedule for legislative endorsement. German authorities thought this signified a major yield and that it would meet Trump's expectations. They were disastrously mistaken. At 7:32 a.m. Eastern Time, under 3 hours following the German reveal, Trump shares on Truth Social that the German strategy is inadequate, impractical, and evidence that Germany isn't a reliable partner. Trump states that Germany has enjoyed decades to fulfill its NATO pledges, and that a vow to meet the goal in 2026 is worthless when Germany could accomplish it right away by shifting current fiscal assets. The message closes with a declaration that rippled through European seats of power. Trump states that if Germany can't fulfill its duties by March 1st, 5 days away, the U.S. will halt all armed collaboration with Germany and commence viewing it as a non-partner country for data exchange, commerce discussions, and safety alliances. That demand was unmatched in contemporary partnership records. But here's what worries me the most. Per multiple sources in European defense departments who spoke to the Financial Times, Le Monde, and The Guardian in the last 18 hours, Trump's demand was absolute. There was no space for negotiation, no escape route via diplomacy, no confidential pathway for Mertz to bargain conditions. The demand was crafted to be unachievable in the given period, meaning it was intended to compel a split, which leads us to this morning at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time, when all finally shattered. Join now if you wish to track the direction of this clash, because the consequences are immense, and traditional outlets will lag 3 hours behind what I'm presenting. Here is what occurred in that private session at NATO headquarters that has envoys labeling this the most severe partnership emergency in 76 years. Per 3 sources updated on the gathering right after, Trump joined through protected video connection from the White House Situation Room. Also participating were Secretary of State Rubio, Defense Secretary Hegseth, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Present in Brussels were the ongoing delegates of all 32 NATO nations, including Germany's envoy to NATO, Jörg Mensa. The gathering was summoned as an urgent meeting of the North Atlantic Council, NATO's main political choice body. These meetings are typically called only in times of sharp emergency, like Article 4 talks when a participant nation feels its safety is at risk. This morning's meeting was sought by the U.S., supposedly to debate Germany's dedication to load sharing and defense investment sufficiency. But per someone who was there, it grew evident in the initial 5 minutes that this wasn't a discussion. It was a demand delivery aimed for utmost embarrassment. Trump began the meeting by declaring that Germany has been an unsuccessful partner for decades and that Americans won't continue funding German wealth while Germany declines to fund its own protection. Per a European envoy who attended, Trump's manner was furious, individualized, and blaming. He mentioned Mertz by name repeatedly, describing him as feeble and implying that Germany under Mertz's guidance was returning to the non-militarism and ethical timidity that in Trump's view had defined German external strategy amid the Cold War. Then Trump issued what several sources are calling the demand that fractured the partnership. Trump declared that starting now, the U.S. was activating Article 13 of the Washington Treaty, which permits participants to stop involvement in the accord after 1 year's warning. But Trump proceeded beyond that. He declared that the U.S. would promptly pause all armed collaboration with Germany, that American troops would start retreating from German land in 30 days, and that Germany would be barred from NATO armed strategy, data exchange, and combined missions until it showed dedication to partnership duties via tangible steps, not assurances. If you're getting worth from this, press that like button immediately, because this narrative is set to become much more intricate, and you'll want to stay for every part. Now, here's what's not out there, and it renders all I've shared even more crucial. Per two sources knowledgeable about the direct fallout from that meeting, German envoy Mensa replied with a declaration that was both resistant and urgent. Mensa declared that Germany dismissed the demand as invalid, that Article 13 couldn't be applied selectively to one participant, and that Germany wouldn't be forced into fiscal choices that infringed its legal methods. Mensa then requested NATO Secretary General Rutte to decide if the U.S. possessed the power to bar a participant nation from partnership actions without official accord revision. Rutte, per these narratives, was in an untenable spot. As Secretary General, Rutte's duty is to promote agreement, not to referee conflicts between the partnership's strongest participants. Per someone updated on Rutte's reply, he declared that the matters brought up by both the U.S. and Germany needed discussion with every participant nation, and that he would call an urgent gathering of foreign ministers in 48 hours to tackle the emergency. But Trump, per several sources, dismissed that method. Trump declared that there was no need for discussion, that Germany was either adhering to its duties or it was excluded from the partnership, and that the U.S. would move forward with troop retreat and collaboration halt no matter what other participants chose. Then Trump issued a declaration that, per a high-level European defense figure, signified the demise of NATO as a shared safety partnership. Trump said that any NATO participant desiring to keep safety collaboration with the U.S. would have to prove its dedication via defense investment, data exchange, and backing for U.S. policy stances on matters encompassing commerce, China, and energy self-reliance. The suggestion was obvious. NATO was no longer a partnership of reciprocal duty. It was a deal-based setup where U.S. safeguarding would be offered solely to nations delivering enough benefit to U.S. priorities as determined singly by Trump. The gathering, planned for 2 hours, finished after 97 minutes when the German envoy and the delegates from France, Poland, and the Netherlands exited. Per someone aware of the German choice to depart, Mensa declared that Germany wouldn't join a meeting intended to degrade a founding participant of the partnership, and that Germany would discuss with other European participants regarding the way ahead. The exit was supported by France's ongoing delegate, who declared that France couldn't remain quiet while the partnership was changed from a reciprocal protection agreement into a safeguard scheme. Poland's delegate, per these narratives, paused, but eventually joined the German and French groups.